Welcome, everyone. Tonight we are hosting James Johnson. James Johnson is a trustee right now for the Village of Skokie and has been there since 2021. And Naema Abraham is the vice president of District 219, which is the high schools here in Skokie. I've known both of them. I think they're both wonderful people, and they're both very qualified for the position they're in, or that they're going for. Manaldasai is also running for office, and she did not want to participate or has not responded to participating. I know her too, and she's a very nice person. So we're going to start off with James Johnson. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and why you're running?
Yeah. And first I'll just say thank you for hosting this forum. I really appreciate the work that Indivisible does. Y'all do so much really interesting work for social and justice and equity work. So thanks for having me.
Thank you.
My name is James Johnson. I am 35 years old. I live in downtown Skokie with my spouse. And when I'm not doing village work, I'm a local high school teacher. I teach social justice courses in the Catholic high school system. And the reason I'm running for clerk, or kind of my main qualifications for the clerk position, are that I've been Skokie's leading advocate for electoral reform. And I'm also Skokie's only independent village elected official. I am the first independent to ever be elected to village office. And for the past 4 years, I've been helping lead village policymaking on a lot of progressive causes like electoral reform and sustainability and affordable housing, all sorts of stuff. So the main task of the clerk is your local election official. And how long do I have for an intro?
We have time here.
Okay.
Under 5 minutes, hopefully.
For over half a century, Skokie has had truly one of the worst local electoral systems in the state. And instead of reforming this system, our mayors and clerks and trustees have really worked hard to perpetuate an inequitable system that keeps candidate turnout low and voter turnout low. So I've been working to change that in the past few years. So in the past 4 years, I've initiated 5 referendums to slowly reform Skokie's electoral system and elections step by step. 4 have already passed: nonpartisan elections, staggered terms, hybrid representation, term limits. The 5th is ranked choice voting, which I'm really excited about. It's going to be on Skokie's April ballot. And really, despite a lot of opposition from our mayor, from the caucus party, and sadly from even our local Democratic Party, we've made a lot of really meaningful electoral change here in Skokie. So as clerk, my goal is to transform our clerk's office into a really nonpartisan center for civic engagement, and in a really independent, nonpartisan way, boost candidate turnout, voter registration, so that Skokie has the vibrant local democracy that we really deserve. So I can sort of, in this call, get into some of the other details of things I'd like to do, but as a trustee, I've really seen the ins and outs of our village government. I think I have a good sense of how our clerk's office can really help make our village government a lot more transparent, a lot more accessible.
I'm sorry, can everyone mute, please? That's not James Johnson.
So as clerk, I'm excited. I would love to do all sorts of nerdy tasks that the clerk's office can do. I want to improve your meeting minutes and your public comment policies and the board's open meetings compliance and all sorts of stuff that hopefully we can talk about later. So yeah, that's who I am.
Thank you. And then next we have Naema Abraham. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little about you and why you're running for office?
Of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Naema Abraham. I have been living in Skokie since 1979. I moved here and there for a few years, but my family home has always been here, and I moved back here about a year ago, a little bit over a year ago. I am Assyrian. I'm an immigrant. I was born in another country. I immigrated here in 1974. And I am currently serving on District 219, and I'm the vice president there. And the reason why I ran was because somebody actually said to me, "Hey, Naema, we need representation." So, and I ran in 2017. And at that time, I got on, and ever since I've been on there, one thing that is crystal clear, even to this day, is there's still a lack of representation. I was the very first brown woman to be elected to that board. And we have done so much work to make that school a little bit, not a little bit, a lot better for students. The diversity of the students that we have. Not all of our students go to college after high school. A lot of them don't have the ability to go, either affordability or the grades. And so we have managed to do a lot of great things to make sure that post-high school, our kids can graduate and have an ability to be having a job to make a living in Skokie and beyond Skokie. And so why do I run for clerk? That's the thing that I've noticed is like there's say like Johnson was alluding to, there is no representation for people, for all of people that live in Skokie. It's just a select few. It's always felt that way. It's unfortunate. And it's time for change. And, you know, as an Assyrian and as a woman, I've walked into that village hall for years, never felt like I was seen, never felt like I was heard until I was elected. Then people were like, oh, hi, Naema. But prior to that, nobody really knew. And a lot of people like me feel the same way. They walk in there and they don't feel like they belong there. And a sense of belonging is really important when you live in a small community like this. And that's why I'm running. It's not just the administrative stuff that needs to be updated, because it's so outdated. But it's really the engagement, the outreach, the voter involvement that it needs to be increased. And this administration has just been very insular all along, and that needs to change. And that's why I'm running.
So I'm going to ask you a few questions just to start off the question and answer session of this. I ask that everyone, if you have questions, that you enter them into the chat. And so it's easy for us to see when the question is being asked. If you could put question in front of the question or Q, and then I'll be able to find it quicker if there's any other conversation going on there. So I'm going to start with Naema, and I'm going to ask Naema a couple questions that I had here. I will start off with, so the village clerk plays a vital role in election administration. How would you ensure transparency and accessibility in Skokie's voting process, especially for underrepresented groups?
Great question. So I actually have a situation that just came up recently. So we recently, the Syrian community has purchased a community center that's on Church Street. It's a huge center. They have services there on Sundays in addition to having other services. And so that community center reached out to the Cook County Clerk's office to ask to be a voting place, a precinct, because we have a lot of foot traffic in that community center. We probably have nearly 1,000 people that walk through that on a weekly basis. And so the Cook County Clerk's office responded by saying, yes, we're always wanting to, increase voter participation. So what we would do is come out there and look at it, and then from there go back to the drawing board and see if we could actually make it a precinct for this upcoming election. That was the initial conversation. And then a few days later, we received an email saying, hey, we've got enough precincts there. We really don't need another one. And it just, to me, it's like we've had pretty much very consistent voter turnout year after year after year after year. And what this tells me is like, why is that not being investigated? Why is that not being something that's being pursued by our own people in Skokie Village Hall, like the clerk's office? I mean, historically, Pramod, and then Minal, they're both from immigrant communities. They know that there's communities like the Syrian communities, like the Muslim school that's in also Niles Township, and a lot of South Pacific community centers that we have here that also have a lot of traffic. Why haven't they been targeted and identified as polling places? I mean, if you want to increase voter participation, why not include them? So that's one of the things that just came up recently, and it just really blows my mind that this is not something that we've done in the past, and this is something that I really would like to pursue. I want more people to participate. I mean, even Assyrians like myself, we don't have a lot of people that come out and vote. There's over 20,000 of us that live here, and maybe 1 to 2% come out to vote. That's just not appropriate. And so the clerk's office has a responsibility to make sure that communities like these certain communities are actually involved in voting. And how do we do that? And I think it just takes a will to want it to happen. Because it's doable. You know, you call the Cook County's office and you could do it. So why isn't this being presented to the elected people who are elected officials to make sure that this can happen for everybody, not just a select few? Why do we always have 4,000, 5,000 people come out and vote? We should have tens and thousands of people come out and vote. We have 65,000 people that live here. So to me, that right there is a sticking point. It's like, it's a challenge, and I don't think it needs to be a challenge. I think it's something that's fixable. So that's what I'd like to do. I want to reach out. I want to educate. A lot of people have apprehension about not knowing how to read and write in English, so they don't want to go to the poll and vote. I take my 87-year-old mother who doesn't know how to read and write, and I help her vote every election year. It's an easy thing to do, but people are a little apprehensive and they need to be educated on that. So it's tiny little things like this that could increase voter participation that needs to happen, and it's not happening.
So you mentioned Pramod Shah. That was our clerk that we had for many, many years in Skokie, and Manal Desai. He retired early, and Manal Desai is the present clerk who's been appointed by Mayor Van Dusen at the time and has been in office, I believe, since maybe last March or April, if I'm not
I
mistaken.
think it was April, May, I think was when she
So
was
just a
appointed.
quick follow-up to that, Naema. How, you mentioned there's so many languages spoken here. What is it, 80 in Skokie, more or less?
You know,
how
the
do you
number
reach out
seems
to
to
those
change.
people?
It seems to be, it ranges from like 80 to almost 100.
Okay.
Sometimes it
How
probably
would
is lower.
you reach out to those people that don't speak English if there's so many languages? How would you facilitate that?
You would need an ambassador from each community. You would literally like just need to have an ambassador from each community and have that person with you at their community center or a community event, and make sure there's somebody there who can help to translate. That is very helpful. A lot of people don't know how to read and write in their own language. So you need somebody to be able to have that ability to communicate with them.
Okay, I'm gonna ask James the same question that I asked her. I'll repeat the question for you. The village clerk plays a vital role in election administration. How would you ensure transparency and accessibility in Skokie's voting process, especially for underrepresented groups?
Okay, well, so as Naima brought out or mentioned, our voter turnout is pretty pathetic in Skokie. In the past 20 years, we've averaged 9% voter turnout in our local elections. And at one point it dipped as low as 4%. Part of solving the problem is solving the systemic roots of the problem. Voter turnout is directly tied to candidate turnout. Voters vote when they have choice and when they have meaningful choice. Right now, because of electoral reform, we have the highest candidate turnout we've seen in Skokie in 60 years. And that's going to result in some of the highest voter turnout that we've seen in many decades. Something that I would like to do as the clerk is I would like to host very public, nonpartisan candidate training sessions where we really demystify the process and publicly break down the candidate process for everyone, not just for the village elections, but for school boards, park districts, so that we boost candidate turnout. If we want to reach the multicultural diverse communities of Skokie, having candidates from those communities is what is going to drive them more than anything. And just like Naima said, it's about being a community liaison. I really want to I'm an educator, so I immediately go to how do we collaborate with school districts and boost civic education in schools, because there's a lot of kind of trickle up effect of, when young people are engaged, their parents and grandparents tend to be a little more engaged. And so it's collaborating with the Skokie Public Library and the Skokie Heritage Museum and the Skokie Historical Society and the League of Women Voters and all of these great nonpartisan organizations that are already boosting voter turnout or voter registration. Currently, your clerk's office is only registering like around 100 voters a year. And these are kind of just random walk-ins, folks who have moved to Skokie. If you walk into Village Hall and you go to our clerk's office, there's nothing that even says registered vote here. You can't do that. It's just kind of blank glass. So there's all sorts of stuff we can do to expand outreach and increase voter participation.
So you think getting new registered voters, once they're registered, how do you get those voters out to vote? How would you encourage voter turnout?
I should also say the Skokie Clerk's office really does literal outreach about elections, period. Like the Skokie Clerk's office has no online presence other than its page on the website. There was briefly, our current clerk was running a clerk's Facebook page and then converted it into a political page. Like currently, there is no digital outreach for the clerk's office telling people here are the deadlines for candidates. Here are the, here's when mail-in ballots go out. Here's when early voting starts. We're not getting any of that from our clerk's office. So yeah, there's all sorts of outreach that can be done.
Well, I've heard you talk about, this is the next question, different
Sure.
subject. I've heard you talk about the Skokie, the village logo, the seal. How do you
Sure.
feel about the work to revise the official village seal?
Yeah, so one of the many responsibilities of the clerk is the keeper of the seal, so to speak. And as many of you know, Skokie for decades has had this really problematic seal, and to be really blatant, a very racist kind of image of a indigenous Potawatomi man with a headdress that's not even a Potawatomi headdress. So it's taken much longer than it should have, but slowly I've helped as a trustee to push for reform to revise the seal. The clerk's office can and should, strangely, has not played a role in this process at all, but should play a role in the implementation of this new seal when we get it. So yeah, that's something I'd be excited to work on as clerk.
As long as you don't change the Blackhawks, I think they've done some accommodations, right? They've given some donations in order to keep that seal, so they're kind of, they did a sort of compromise, I believe, right?
I will say our village
Big
seal
heartland.
committee and our human relations commission, they've done a really good job of incorporating indigenous voices from the Mitchell Museum, or what was the Mitchell Museum, and Northwestern, to really make this process really inclusive and to come up with a seal that indigenous communities, actually have a say in. Yeah.
Great. Same question to you, Naema. How do you feel about the village seal, and would you want to change it?
I'm with James. I think that it needed to be changed for a long, long time. However, I did kind of want to, do it in a way where it was inclusive of everyone, everyone's input. So I kind of wanted to have everyone in the village to be a part of that process. And as an example, like when we did at District 219, when we did our strategic plan for, for the 5 years, we invited everybody from the township, like, leadership people from the community centers to come in and help us actually build out the strategic plan. And I kind of envisioned the same thing for the seal. And I don't know that happened. I don't recall ever being invited to any type of a community effort to actually have input from everyone. But that is something that I really would love to have happened, and it didn't. But yeah, I'm completely for overhauling it.
Great. I should have introduced Judy Aronson. She's a co-admin with me on Indivisible, and does a wonderful job. And she has a question, and there seems to be another question in the chat. So off you go, Judy.
Okay, I apologize. My husband is drilling in the background, so I'll mute in between. The first question is to both of you in 60 seconds. What would you do different for your positions?
Is that Chief Scott's question? Can you be a little more
Yes.
specific?
I think maybe this is kind of an overly generalized comment, but I think for too long, the clerk has been really treated as simply the secretary of the board and has really functioned to serve at the direction of the mayor and trustees, even when that direction has been poor, even when it's been directed towards open meetings violations or something like that. I think how I'm going to really transform the clerk's office is I think the clerk is an elected representative of Skokie residents. So that's how I'm going to approach the clerk's office is I'm not here to serve the board. I'm here to serve residents. And being the secretary of the board is just one of the many multifaceted roles that the clerk plays. Fundamentally, the clerk is an independent community advocate elected by residents to serve residents. And that's how I'm going to approach the position.
Naema, do you want to answer that question too?
Of course. So one of the things that I learned through this process when I looked at their job description is, and in speaking to other elected officials at the village, is that a primary responsibility is community engagement. And when I was told that, I'm like, oh, I've never experienced that with the village clerk's office in the entire time that I lived in Skokie. And so to me, that's really what I want to do. I want to engage the residents. I want to be the bridge between what the resources are in the village hall and make sure that everyone knows that, that everybody knows what their resources are and how to tap into those resources. I feel like that's not something that they've been doing traditionally, and many people do not know what kind of resources are available at the village, and they should. And I think maybe the people who can self-advocate probably do know, but those who do not, and we have a lot of people who don't know how to advocate for themselves, those are the people that we need to make sure know what those resources are and how they could tap into it. So engagement and outreach is one of the main things that I will be doing if I am elected.
Okay. The next question actually came from me. And in California, voter turnout is boosted by making sure that voters are aware of everything that's on the ballot in advance. And I've found that it's very difficult to find out what is on the ballot in our elections. Not even Ballotopedia has the full ballot. What would you do, and this goes to both of you, what would you do to make sure that people know what is on the ballot so that you can have more informed voters and a more informed electorate?
I can go first, James. I mean,
Yeah.
we can swap, I guess. So, you know, for me, like that's a great question, and I completely agree with what you just said. We in my school district actually built this, East Prairie built a new building, and that was a referendum, and many people did not know that that passed because they're like, oh my God, it passed. Why did my taxes go up? Had absolutely no idea. And so, and that was a problem because many people were very upset. And so for me, it seems like we really needed to do, again, education, bring this matter to the people, make sure they understand the importance of them going out to vote, because this does impact the bottom line, their tax dollars that they pay every year. And so for me, that is what I would do. Definitely like 3 months prior to voting time, go out there and make sure that people really understand it. And if you have to go door to door to knock, and I think that really is necessary, going door to door, because many people just don't have the time. So you have to kind of chase them and give them that information, make sure that they're empowered with that information, and then empower them to say, hey, go out and vote for this. Is this something that you want or you don't? So I'm a true believer in empowering people with information. And if you have to knock at their door to get that done, then that's exactly what we would do.
To go back to a previous point I made, like so much of engagement is getting out there in the community, but like so much of engagement is digital. We live in a digital world, and the clerk's office has really no online presence. Our clerk, we just had a term limits referendum on Skokie's ballot, in November, and the village put a few things on their website, but the clerk's office did absolutely nothing to inform people that they had a major binding electoral change that they were voting on. You can go to the clerk's website and see a list of candidates who filed. It doesn't have any information about, their websites or where you can go for more information. I also think the clerk's office, I think Naema agrees with this, needs to be really collaborative. I've been doing a lot in the past few years to help support the League of Women Voters expanding back into Skokie. The league used to be very active here in the 1970s and kind of fell off at some point. In late February, the League of Women Voters and the Skokie Public Library are going to be hosting public candidate forums for every single village position, recorded and put out to the entire community. And historically, these are the kind of forums that our elected officials have avoided. When I ran for trustee, there were 0 candidate forums, or that my opposing candidates were willing to participate in. I had no opportunity to have what we're having right now with like an actual sit-down forum conversation with another candidate. So there's all sorts of ways to boost awareness. Yeah, I think the intent is everything. Oh, well, maybe this is going on another point, but Celeste just put in the chat something about the location of the office. The clerk's office does so little engagement with inside Village Hall. If you walk in, half of the time the office is empty, or like you can't see anyone there. The clerk sometimes usually works in a back office, and the deputy clerk kind of works around the corner. There's no signage or anything that even tells you what the clerk's office is. It's not a welcoming office. I'm going to really kind of reverse that trend. As clerk, I'm not going to work in the back office. I'm going to work right up front so that when you walk in, I'm right there smiling and ready to talk to you. I'm going to kind of like swap offices with the deputy clerk so that I'm right at the front.
I was thinking you were going to come with your toolkit and build a new room.
I didn't mean that, but so it's engagement inside the clerk's office, outside of the clerk's office, and kind of collaboration with lots of community partners. That's how I see it.
Naema, do you want to say anything about that?
The clerk's office? Yeah, I 100% agree. It's like tucked away, you walk in and there's nobody ever there. Like there's nobody at the front where you could just like kind of go say hi or ask a question. And that is something that I thought about many times when I walk into the village hall. It's like, why are they never around? If their primary job is to engage. And so I agree, I would be out in the front. I would always be out in the front so that people can see me. I want to see people. I want to know who they are, and I want to say hello, and I want to engage with them in conversation and see why they're even there. And maybe I can help, because that's what we're supposed to do, right? So yeah, I 100% agree. I've already made it a point. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be out there all the time. There's really no reason to be back there as much as they are. It just makes no sense to me.
Okay. Going back to like the website and all that, we had a question about how we can digitize the history in that office. James, that's up your alley a lot.
I want to add to that question. I mean, we're entering the 21st century, and a lot of things are done via Zoom or via, just via internet. What are your visions on modernizing and digitizing to both of you?
This is actually something that as a trustee, I've brought up multiple times during our village board budget hearings, and there's never been any action on it. The village board has not digitized its historic records. If you walk, if you see the clerk's office, there's this huge vault. And if you go inside, there's these literal bound volumes of village board minutes and records going back to the 1880s. And they're just sitting there. And these are literally like single physical deteriorating copies of village history that have not been digitized. If you go to the village website, you can see village board minutes and records going back like 10 to 15 years. Everything else is kind of, it's not digitized. So you know, the Skokie Public Library has already done such incredible work to create digital access to like Skokie news archives. So the clerk's office can absolutely collaborate with other community partners like the library, like the Heritage Museum, like the Historical Society to ensure that the village board's history is digitized and like actually preserved well. Documents from the 1880s should not just be, you know, sitting in an open air vault in the village clerk's office. Yeah, we can do a lot more to preserve in our history.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that office needs to be automated in many ways, not just the history, but everything needs to be automated. You know, we digitized our minutes. We used to get these, not just minutes, but like the booklets, the packets that we would get that we have to review for the agenda. We've been digital for 5 years at District 219. And prior to that, it was all paper, which was insane. So we did that. I come from a background where I was very much involved in the private sector with databases and data mining. And, you know, that's one of the things that I would want to do is I want to make sure that whatever processes we're going through, if there's an opportunity to automate it, it should be automated. You know, one of the complaints that I heard most recently was, you know, from real estate, we have to submit documents, real estate documents, and they have to have a stamp on them. And in Wilmette, you could submit them digitally, and then you get it back immediately, like it's an immediate return within a few minutes. With Skokie, you have to submit it in person, and then it takes the turnaround time is like could be up to a week depending on holidays or the volume of work that they have to do. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and that's something that will definitely get done. That needs to be done.
And to kind of go with that, you never know what's going to happen. Look at everything that was just lost in LA that was in people's homes and supposedly in safes and things like that. Then the next question is, does our clerk office offer free notary services?
That's kind of a very specific question, so let's broaden that up a little bit and see, like, compared to other clerks' offices, if you've compared Skokie with other offices around Cook County, are there other ideas that you would add, services that you would add that we do not offer now, including the notary services?
Clerk's office sometimes does notary services. They don't advertise it. Sometimes people go to the township offices or go to local banks. But yeah, if the clerk's office is going to offer notary services, the clerk and the deputy should be notaries, and it should be a very public service, you know, very known.
Are there any other services you'd like to bring to Skokie that you don't see that we have right now?
I think, you know, so our clerk's office is technically, not really in practice, but technically divided into two branches. We've got an elections branch, or, you know, a section and a record section. So everything related to minutes, passports, notary services, that's all in the records. So, but I mean, historically, the clerk's office has been the records division and really has done little to nothing with the elections division. So I think I'm kind of approaching this from the elections division. That's what needs to be expanded and improved. That's what's kind of non-existent at this point. So all the kinds of voter outreach and engagement and electoral work that we've been talking about, you know, that's kind of that in some sense that is new services. Yeah.
Naema, would you like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to really explore other types of services that we could offer our community and our residents that would be free or at reduced cost. I mean, that's always something that our community members are interested in. So that is something that I would definitely want to explore if elected. I think that's very important to our community members. So yes.
Judy, do you have more questions?
Okay, that's all the questions that we have in the chat, but there's still quite a few people who are here. Who else has any questions?
while I give you guys time to think, for a few more minutes, and maybe we'll end early. I just wanted to bring up the fact that, we are having this every Wednesday, at 7:30 for contested elections. I am very impressed with the professionalism of both candidates and how polite they are to each other. It's refreshing after seeing the federal government, how they're behaving. So anyone within the contested election will be welcome, despite your political leanings. We should give everybody a fair chance and be fair with everyone. And next week, we'll be hosting, hopefully, our new mayors, Ann Tennis, who happens to be on the line. Thanks for joining us, Ann. And Ozzy, how do you pronounce the last name? I should know that. Lifkits, or can someone help me out here?
Linguistics.
Okay, thank you. He has yet to respond. I'm optimistic that he will join us next week. I think he's just checking to see his availability. So, I've also invited, there's a third candidate who has already, declined to come, Charles Ishu. He said he'd had a very busy, schedule. So, if there are no other questions, I will have some closing arguments, or closing, not arguments, closing comments. This is not a court of law. Sorry, Habit. Recovering lawyer.
Yeah. Not to be improper, but could I like kind of ask myself a question that I really wanted to answer that maybe didn't come up?
Yeah, I was going to ask a final question actually to both of you, but I thought it was, but go ahead.
Well, we've talked a lot about like voter turnout, voter participation, voter awareness. That is also important. There's also this whole other side of village awareness, which is awareness of active village policymaking. For years in the community, something I hear all the time from residents is we don't know what's going on in terms of active village policymaking. A big decision will be made and voters will say, well, why didn't we know about this? Why didn't we get to participate? As a trustee, I've been doing what I call kind of pre and post meeting reports for every meeting. I've been sending out information, kind of short summaries of here's everything that's going to be talked about during a village board meeting, and here's how you participate. I'm going to do a lot more of that as clerk, but in a more overtly nonpartisan way, with zero commentary. I want you to imagine that before every village board meeting, you got an email from your clerk's office and it was posted online of, here's when this meeting is, here's everything on the agenda, here's short summaries of everything on the agenda, here's where you go for more information, and here's what you need to know if you want to participate. For everything, every form of village policymaking. One of my big ideas is I want to have a legislation tracker on the village website. Imagine you could go to the village website and look up any village policy issue. You could look up what's going on with this shell of a Hilton hotel downtown, or, Carvana, or, some issue, and see, oh, well, it went through the plan commission here. Here's the agenda. Here's where you can watch the video. Oh, it's coming to the village board at this state. Here's how you can participate. Imagine you could kind of you could track any form of local policy making that you're interested in, no matter what your interest is. So I think that kind of awareness, that's really what's going to boost civic engagement even more than just voting.
That'd be similar to the Library of Congress. You can track a bill and see where
Totally.
who proposed it, that type of thing. Interesting. Okay. So who wants to do their closing statement first? Oh, Judy.
I wanted to
sorry.
say something. I could see how that could go in the Skokie e-news that comes out already lists the meetings that are coming up.
Yep.
And it could be linked right into there. So you've already got a method of communication in place. It would just be filling it out and making the information available. Because, I know I read through it, and, I no longer live in Skokie. I live in Morton Grove, but I work in Skokie. And so some of the stuff still applies to me. And let's face it, Skokie, Morton Grove, Lincolnwood, that's why we're all in one group. It's all intertwined. We're all right on top of each other.
Yeah, we need depth. You know, it's more than there's a meeting on Monday at 7:30. It's on the agenda. We're talking about X, Y, and Z issues. We might, no offense to the village board, but sometimes our meetings are really boring. Sometimes everything's like very routine stuff. And sometimes we're talking about incredibly important policy issues that are very nuanced and deserve really rich community input. So making that information not hard to find and presenting it in a really comprehensive, nonpartisan way is going to be super helpful for community involvement.
Would either of you embellish the role that you play while you're in a board meeting?
I have thoughts, but
Let's hear them.
Our clerks are currently very silent. They do very little in village board meetings other than do roll calls. If you look at, first of all, our clerk needs to be in charge of public comments. Our public comment sections of village board meetings are so poorly moderated. Very rarely are there even rules and regulations of public comments even spelled out. If you go to Evanston, the clerk, when you get to public comments, says, here are the written public comments that we received before the meeting, and gives short summaries of each one. They say, Alanka Ulrich wrote in and voiced their support for X issue. David Rosenthal wrote in and voiced opposition to X issue, and kind of present that. Our current village board hides that information. We've had meetings where 400 people write in opposition of Carvana, and you hear nothing of it in the meeting. Another thing I really want to do, our village clerk is typically in charge of like the Pledge of Allegiance. I would love, especially with our new seal, I would love it if we added a land acknowledgement into our village board meetings. That's something that the clerk's office could really do. Yeah.
Naema, do you want to chime in and maybe give a closing statement?
Yeah, so just closing statement then?
It's up to you. If you want to answer the question, you could just give a closing statement. It's fine. I think we
Yeah.
have a good idea of what you both think about a lot of things.
Okay, so the closing, basically, as I said earlier, I really just want to run for Skokie Village Clerk just to serve everyone. I feel like not everyone is served, and everyone should be. So for me, like for decades, the current administration has operated in a very insular way, and I think that's part of the reason why those referendums happened. It's like if they were more engaging, that would have never happened. And I think that really indicates that it truly is time for change. To me, the clerk's office plays a critical role in connecting the residents to the services they need, and I'm committed to making more inclusive, transparent, and making it more accessible. So to me, a vote for me would be really to challenge the status quo and ensure that Skokie works for everybody, not just a selected few.
Yeah. James, do you have any
Sure.
closing statement?
I already said a lot about me tonight, so I'm going to say this is going to be kind of a broader statement about this election as a whole. Skokie really desperately needs a new generation of village leaders. Our one-party government has been stale for a really long time. We need new, independent, progressive voices, not just in the clerk's office, but on the village board. And thanks to these incredible citizen-led electoral reforms that have been implemented, we have more choices than we've had since the 1950s. Skokie has a phenomenal independent mayor candidate in Antinous. Skokie has an utterly phenomenal trustee candidate in Gail Schechter. We have great district candidates in Nathan Norman and Lisa Levy and Jim Iverson. So this election is really important for Skokie, and I want to really encourage people to rally behind progressive independent candidates who can truly support the common good and reform aspects of our village government that are in great need of reform. Thank you.
If there are no other questions, then I guess we're ending for the evening. And look forward to seeing you all in the future. I think this is a great idea that we don't have to go out in the cold and we can watch you from our homes. Thanks for participating, you guys. And good luck to both of you. I really do. Think you're both very qualified and I'm just so impressed at how cordial you both were to each other and respectful. Thank you for that. We need
Thanks.
that in our country, right? Have a
Thank
good
you.
night,
Thanks for
everyone.
hosting. And it is a very friendly campaign. You're never going to hear any nastiness between anyone.
Well, thanks for having us.
Great.
Yeah.
It's not that
Thank you.
not that
Thanks
way in
everybody for
Skokie, but
coming.
we'll see.
Appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Good night, everyone.